Hi everyone, welcome back. It's been a while for me to be recording. I'm still not 100%. I've been a little bit sick. Some of you are aware, some of you are not. Anyway, never mind. We just keep rolling on. Today I want to talk about Vesta. Before I do, let me just make a couple of announcements. So I just completed a Chiron, you could call it a workshop. Was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. It's part of my second series. And it really was a very intense but very healing class, actually. All of my students would agree with that. It's a three-hour webinar, which you can have access to if you are interested in that. I do highly recommend it. Chiron is very misunderstood and often not even used by a lot of astrologers. And I think that's an error, actually, because Chiron is the key. It even looks like a key. The symbol looks like a key. It's the key to individuating in our path of evolution from Saturn to Uranus. So you can't have a spiritual bypass from Saturn and dive straight into Uranus. Everyone needs to work through the Chiron factor in their chart, and Chiron sits in between Saturn and Uranus, and that's not an accident and it's not a coincidence. So this workshop focuses on the mythology of Chiron, which is quite complex. Focuses on Chiron's cycle, which is between 48 to 51 years when we have our Chiron return. Some of you may not be anywhere near that age. It doesn't really matter. It's very valuable to understand Chiron's cycle, because within that 48 to 51 year cycle, Chiron will form a square to itself at a particular age. Then it will form an opposition, and then it will form another square, which will be called the last quarter square. Both of those squares are very important passages, as is the opposition, and they happen at very different times because Chiron has a very peculiar elliptical orbit and therefore spends very odd periods of time in different signs. It might spend 2 years in one sign and it might spend 15 years in another sign. It's very unusual. So understanding that cycle into itself is very, very important. And I've got in the PDF files, I've even got, graphs of, how long Chiron spends in each sign. If in Aries, if it was in Aries when you were born, when will the first quarter square be? When will the opposition be? When will the last quarter square be? And so on and so forth through every sign. We talk about all things to do with Chiron and Chiron aspecting planets in your chart, or being conjunct one of your angles, which makes it very prominent. Also conjunct any of the personal planets. Because people who have Chiron placed in such a prominent way experience a very Chiron life. And that's not an easy life, by the way, but it is very rewarding. There's so many aspects to Chiron. It's not just the wounded healer, okay? There are many, many different facets of this very complex archetype, who lived to be over 700 years of age. And his story connecting to Prometheus, Uranus, and also Saturn is very significant as well. And Chiron formed an opposition to Uranus for about 40 years in different signs in the last few decades. And that's also very, very significant from the point of view of the collective evolution and what that means, and so on and so forth. So we talked about all of that, looked at some extraordinary chart examples of individuals that have Chiron prominently placed in their chart and what that shows, their story and so forth. So I recommend it if you are If you have Chiron prominent in your chart, and even if you don't, it's worth just delving deep and understanding this archetype, because if you are looking at charts or working with people, it's going to be a very valuable resource to have in your understanding. Outside of that, there are 2 different series that are available. One series has already been recorded and completed. The second series, we are more than halfway through, which is where this Chiron component fits in the second series. And in this second series, we are also going to be looking at asteroids as well, various asteroids. Now, although today I'm going to talk about Vesta, I'm just going to talk about some key points to consider. And I'm inspired to talk about this because Vesta, the priestess, this goddess, this beautiful goddess, is so prominent in my own chart, so prominent. She's conjunct my Mars. She's in my 12th house with Mars. She's in, very specific aspect patterns and so on and so forth. And I will share just, a few details of my own personal journey with her as well. But even though I'm talking about Vesta today, just bear in mind that I'm going to be doing a whole class on Vesta and some other asteroids coming up in the next perhaps couple of months, or maybe 2 months or something like that. I'm not sure where it fits in the schedule. But if you want to know more about Vesta outside of what I talk about today, I encourage you to take that class. It's worth it, well worth it. Most of you know that I work very closely with asteroids. I pay a lot of attention to them because they are freaking mind-blowing when they show up and when they describe a very specific story of either the person's journey through their life or certain passages that are happening. The correlations are just absolutely mind-blowing. There are many, many asteroids. There are many that haven't even been named yet or discovered yet. So therefore we don't work with them. And as we evolve, as everything keeps evolving, there are new discoveries all the time, right? There are actually 1.9 million asteroids sitting in between the belt of Mars and Jupiter. So there's a lot there, right? And there's thousands upon thousands that have been discovered that, have been named. Like you would probably find an asteroid that corresponds to your name, for example, and that would be important. So if you want to have access to any of that, just send me an email. Also, I want to announce that for the month of June, because we're almost at the end of May, I'm going to give a discounted price to readings. And I'm doing that because I need some help now. It's just that time for me where I need a bit of help. So I need to work with some new people and just kind of build up a bit of a momentum again, because things have been very, very quiet. So this is an opportunity for you to work with me, with my skills, with my knowledge, with my experience, for a price that's going to be a lot less than what I would normally charge. So reach out if you want to take that opportunity to work with me. We can look at anything you like. We can look at your Venus star points. We can look at transits. We can look at progressions. We can look at your Fidaria periods, annual perfections. We can look at harmonic charts. I mean, literally, there's eclipse, anything you want. It's a great opportunity. So it obviously depends on what you want and how much time you want to spend with me, but it will be worth an investment for you. So I'll just put that out there for you, any of you who want to reach out. That will be, I guess for most of the month of June, I'll be offering that to people. Okay, so moving on to Vesta. Vesta she's a priestess. She's the goddess of the hearth, the flame, the sacred flame. And in Greece, historically, every home had a fireplace in honor and dedication to this priestess, to this goddess. Vesta was discovered in 1807, so it was a long time ago. She's one of the brightest asteroids, actually, which is a really interesting synchronicity, given she represents the sacred flame. So even in her astronomical phenomena and appearance, she's actually a very, very bright asteroid. She had the Vestal Virgins working with her. And here's a really important point to understand from a historical perspective. Pre-7,500 years ago, which is a long time ago, the earth and humanity and cosmos and culture and everything was not set up in a way where there was marriage, where there was contracts, where there was systems and rules. It was a matriarchal, organic way of life. And so there was no such thing as marriage. There was no such thing as I own you. All that came into existence when the patriarchal system gradually took over, to the point where the zodiac sign Libra didn't even exist in those matriarchal times. So see, Vesta corresponds to both Virgo and Scorpio, which are both signs to do with sacred, sexual, spiritual energy. So the Vestal Virgins and Vesta were not actually virgins. They were virgins from the point of view that they were totally and utterly dedicated to their own holistic self. They were free unto themselves. So when the zodiac sign Libra got put into the system, which was through the Greek period of history and astrology, that is when marriage came into play in the world. Libra representing marriage, if you like. And that was when the patriarchal system took over, and that was when this split came in relative to a woman's identity and a woman's sexuality. Pre that, a woman's sexuality was totally free. There was no, you're either a virgin or a whore. This extreme did not exist. The way things operated at that time, in the matriarchal times, that is, because there was no such thing as marriage and there was no such thing as contracts and I own this and you own this and so on and so forth. It was a free land. It was a free way of life. It was community-based. And so people would have children with numerous partners, and people would be having sexual encounters with numerous partners and people. That was the norm. That was normal. So when the patriarchal system came in and changed things around, it created this split with the Madonna and the whore. That's a very crude word, but it's just a reality. So that split is a psychic imprint, in the collective unconscious. And so as time has gone on, there's been this projection of what a woman's role should be, and that is she should be a virgin pre-marriage, and then after, when she gets married, she should just be with that one partner, and that's the norm. But that's a norm that has been created in a patriarchal movement society, and it all derives from the level of ownership and greed and control. That's what its basic premise is about. It's got nothing to do with this virgin business or this, sleeping around or whatever. The motivation is all about money. Think about it. Taurus sits opposite Scorpio. Okay, so these Vestal virgins, they were sexual therapists, actually, is what they were. They were sexual healers. They would have encounters with numerous people, and it had nothing to do with their own sexual gratification and pleasure when they engaged in these activities. It was actually about healing others. So the sexual energy was used to heal people in those times. And even post the matriarchal time and so forth, I think it was post that time, there were women that would pretty much perform the same acts that these Vestal virgins did in the times of war, when there were wars taking place and things like that, because of the severe trauma that men experienced during times of war and battle and conflict. It was the women that would heal them and soothe their trauma, their PTSD and so forth. There's a lot of different levels and layers to this, but that's just another example. So Vesta types then in the birth chart, actually, before I go there, it's just some other astrology. Vesta she's a child of Saturn, and she was the eldest child of all his children. Now, if you remember Saturn in mythology, he swallowed all his children, right? For fear of being overtaken by them. Thus, Saturn, the archetype Saturn, corresponding to fear and control and numerous other things in the psychology of Saturn. Now, when he swallowed all his children, they eventually were all released. And the last one to come out was Vesta. So she stayed inside Saturn for the longest period of time out of all the children. And that's a very poignant point about the archetype of Vesta and what she represents. And I've always said that Vesta corresponds to the soul work that we do, that devotional, devoted, sacred, focused work that we choose to do at the exclusion of everything else. She's very mystical and deep and complex because she actually stayed inside Saturn for so long. It shows us actually that she just did her own thing, as it were. All the other children wanted to come back out and be released and carry on with their divine purpose and so forth. But Vesta was quite content by herself inside in this space where she didn't need anybody. And that's a very important point about Vesta types, because Vesta types do not need to be in a marriage, do not need to be in that traditional partnership. They are actually probably more at ease just being completely free and being with multiple people. But because of the patriarchal system that came in and changed everything, the stigma associated to women being free sexually and expressing themselves sexually and their creative energy and so forth, what gets labeled on that is things like a whore or a slut or whatever, those sorts of things, right? And I would even say that working prostitutes would probably have a very strong Vesta in their chart. And strong Virgo. Virgo is the sign that would actually correspond to prostitution as well, because prostitution is a service. That's what it is. And Virgo is the archetype of service, right? So Vesta in Virgo would be, a typical thing that you would probably see in a chart of a working girl, for example. And because of the way society and culture in the world has been altered in terms of how a woman should be perceived relative to those sorts of activities, prostitution is viewed as something that's wrong, immoral, bad, so on and so forth. But all you have to remember is that back in the day, that was the norm. That's how they operated, and it was a sacred practice. Actually, sexuality was so sacred in those times. So, because Vesta also corresponds, has a very strong connection to Saturn, because she was his daughter and she was the one who stayed ingested inside him for such a long time. She also has very similar qualities to Saturn. She too, just like Saturn, corresponds to commitment, restriction, boundaries, limitations, denying oneself of something. So what we can see with Vesta types sometimes is two extremes, and this is where we need a balance. And I think Vesta's discovery, unconsciously through the collective unconscious, was discovered so that humanity can reintegrate the suppressed Vesta aspects of ourself and work with that energy in a more harmonious manner, because the extreme level of that is to be completely promiscuous, or the other end of that is to be in complete suppression of your sexual energy. And because of the shifts in from matriarch to patriarch, having this sense of guilt and sex is dirty and sex is wrong to just have it with anybody, and so on and so forth, right? But I think the fine line in that is that sexual energy in the times of the Vestal virgins and Vesta herself, it was not used, as I said, for sexual personal gratification. It was used for sexual healing, for sexual spiritual sacred healing. So in today's day and age, we can find these extremes where people are totally promiscuous, and that can be problematic if they are in a relationship, because of the model that's imprinted in our psyches that says we cannot be with multiple partners, for the most part, generally speaking, right? Once we are committed to somebody, then, we have our commitment to that person, and that's it. Nowadays, people are more open to having open marriages, open relationships. I understand that. And if that's a mutual agreement between two adults, that's their business, right? That's a more healthier expression of Vesta, if you like, in a society and a world that is dominated by these patriarchal systems, where marriage and contracts are still very much the go. So some of the other psychological pathologies that can occur with Vesta is because of that suppression of that natural urge. There can be, as I said, guilt and things like that, and also just a complete denial of one's sexual energy. It can also be a very focused, a conscious, focused commitment to the sexual energy and that flame inside that Vesta is, to be focused in something very specific in our work or in our life. The word investment comes from the word Vesta. So that also tells us that when we invest ourselves into something, we are doing a Vesta thing. And because she is the principle of focus, it literally does mean that we focus on something to the exclusion of everything else, and it makes it very powerful and very, very sacred. It can also be very hidden, very private. It depends who you are and what your story is about. It can be investments, literally, from the point of view of the monetary world, the material world. That will be detailed in your chart based on other factors connecting to Vesta, for example. And or it can be just very, very private focused energy that you yourself work on. You know, Vesta is very private and very mystical and very deep and very hidden. She stayed ingested in Saturn the longest. Remember that. That's a key to understanding how Vesta energy works in our life. Sexual therapists, for example, probably strong Vesta in their chart. One other thing that comes up very strongly with Vesta is the commitment to celibacy. So it really is that split of either extreme sexual activity or the opposite end being a nun or a priest that takes a vow of chastity, of celibacy. Now, I have Vesta conjunct my Mars, as I said, and I don't want to go into too much personal detail because it's very private. And I am a very private person anyway. But I can tell you now that I have gone through really long periods of celibacy in my life. And then I've gone through periods where I've been on the opposite end of that, very sexually engaged and active. And I've gone through both those extremes at different passages in my life for different reasons, at different times. And of late, I've been going through a celibate period, for a few years, actually, believe it or not. And what I have done with that Vesta energy, which is in my 12th house conjunct Mars, I've focused all my sexual energy into what I wanted to focus on, which was my YouTube channel, my astrology work, my service, right? With that goddess, priestess energy to honor the divine goddess in all things and bring forth my wisdom and my passion in my teachings. And that is at the exclusion of really everything else, because since I started my YouTube channel, I've hardly had a social life. I haven't had a boyfriend. I've just focused all my energy into what I'm doing with you right here, right now, today. And it is very extreme, I know, but I'm content with that. It doesn't bother me. Like I'm at ease with that. I've chosen that for different reasons. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be like that forever, because nothing is forever. But I just wanted to give you an example of how that's playing out for me. One other thing, before I give you another example, Vesta also corresponds to sisters. So Vesta in your chart, it could describe your sister, or just your relationship with your sister or sisters, whether you're a man or a woman, doesn't matter. So Mercury corresponds to siblings, right? We know that, but Vesta especially corresponds to sisters. And there's usually something very interesting going on between family dynamics and siblings relative to sisters when Vesta is prominent in a person's chart, or in the siblings charts and so forth. And it can also be that Vesta in your own chart can actually describe, like, I'll give you an example. In my own chart, it actually describes my past life connection with my own mother, because my mother in this life was my sister in a previous life. So it can go very deep. It depends what sort of imprint you have in your chart and the dynamics with family and so on and so forth. So these are things that I can help you understand if you come to me and we look at your chart together and so on and so forth. That's just another example. I have a brother, one of my brothers, who is a born-again Christian. And so he's taken it to a real extreme in that he's been celibate for years and years and years and years since he joined the church, probably more than 20 years, and he has a Sun Vesta conjunction. So I found that really interesting because that's a family member of mine, and that's a literal description. Then I looked at my father's chart, and he had a Moon Vesta conjunction, and he too went through periods of long periods of celibacy as well. So it's just fascinating to look at your own family dynamics with certain archetypes, because they tend to be repetitive. So Vesta's quite strong in my family dynamics. The archetype Aquarius is very strong in my family dynamics. We've all got personal planets in Aquarius, every single one of us. We are all Venus morning stars. These family patterns and dynamics have an ancestral linkage. They're not random, they're not accidental, they're very purposeful, and they are very linked into the interactions and unfoldments and dynamics between yourself and your family members. Very powerful stuff, actually. So let me just see if I've mentioned everything. With men, sometimes a Mars Vesta conjunction can be impotency, being impotent. For women, it would be Vesta Venus, where a woman can be frigid. Frigidity shows up very strongly. Because this Vesta energy, especially in the imprint of this patriarchal society, it gets suppressed. And it gets suppressed and blocked. It becomes this blocked energy. And so part of the purpose of understanding Vesta and working with Vesta is to unblock that sacred flame and honor it for what it is, which is sacred sexual energy and power, spiritual, sacred sexual power that must be honored and used in that way and understood in that way. So the house placement, the aspects to her, and so on and so forth will extract the fuller sort of details to your Vesta in your chart. And finally, so those are just some of the key things that I wanted to highlight today for those of you that are not aware of any of that information. Maybe some of you are partly aware, or whatever the case is, everyone knows different things. Vesta, let me just show you what's happening here, because this is quite interesting for those that are working with Vesta, let's say. This chart is for the 22nd of June, and you can see Vesta at 0 degrees of Leo. So she just popped into Leo, day before that perhaps. And look at that. She immediately forms an opposition to Pluto while Pluto is retrograde in Aquarius. Now, for many people, this might not mean much, and for many other people, it will mean a lot. It would depend on where this polarity is, where it is in your own birth chart. So for me, it's exactly on my ascendant-descendant axis, which I know is very meaningful for me, because the ascendant-descendant axis, of course, has got to do with yourself and others, okay, and your whole relating style, all your relationships, and so forth. The reason I think that this will be powerful for certain people is because Vesta corresponds to the soul work. It's very deep, deep work that we do when we integrate that sacred priestess, goddess, sexual energy. it's a soulful thing, right? It's not a fake fake, what else can I say? Sexual path of just your own sensual pleasures and delights. That's Venus's realm. Venus is all about pleasure for herself. She of course likes to please others as well. There's no question about that. But she is a goddess of the senses, of the pleasures, the delights and pleasures that we experience through this physical body. But as I said at the beginning, Vesta is her desire to share her sexual sacred flame is all about the healing component and the sacredness of that, and the what comes out of that for the other. I'll share this. This is a personal detail, but I'll try and share it in a way that's understandable and that doesn't disclose too much about my own personal stuff. I've had numerous partners that have said to me in the past that the sexual exchange between myself and that person has been the most healing thing that they have ever felt. And I'm not lying, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not saying it to, you know, toot my own horn. It's been said to me multiple times through the years. And I know that's because I have Vesta conjunct Mars. Mars is my sexual energy as well. And Vesta is my sexual energy. And Vesta types have this connection to sexual energy in this sacred way. And so one of the downsides to that is that we have this memory, this psychic sort of imprint and memory of the sexual experiences having meant something so much more profound than just a casual, you know, one night stand that has no substance to it, no depth, no meaning, no feeling to it. Some one night stands can have all of that, because it's not in the amount of times that you exchange. It can just be in that one moment where something like that can come out, right? So it's not about picking on one night stands, because it could happen. Some people can be together for 10 years and they never have any of that type of experience. It's just a basic mundane, oh, let's just kind of, yeah, all right, we have to kind of do this because we're married or we're in a relationship. And then others can have these real ecstatic experiences, you know. And when you've got Vesta conjunct one of your personal planets, namely Venus or Mars, there's this side to you that remembers a very deep past life memory of having been in that sexual priestess environment, or having played out that role in some kind of way, and understanding that the deeper experience and exchange between sexual energy, sexual fluids, and so on and so forth, right? So there's this memory of that, and you kind of how that translates in the modern sort of psyche, if you like, is that you're looking for this ecstatic, sacred, sexual experience with people, and we often don't get that. And so there can be this extreme frustration and disappointment for Vesta types. And what that can sometimes turn out to be is I'm over it, I'm so over it, you know, this I don't want to have sex anymore. I don't want to have sex with that person anymore. It's just so boring. It's just so unfulfilling, because there's this memory underneath in the imprint that's looking for the ecstatic, because this sacred sexual energy of Vesta is at that ecstatic level in its purest form. So back to the Vesta Pluto, because Pluto corresponds to the soul, and so does Vesta, this can be a powerful integration on a personal level relative to the Vesta energy, and or it can bring certain things into the relationship that you're in from that sacred, spiritual, sexual level as well. There can be a lot of healing that takes place. There can be a lot of transformative energy that can be experienced through this particular aspect. And it brings in the heart, Leo. So it's an interesting one, because I think Vesta in Leo really speaks to having your heart invested in what you are investing your energy in. And because it is Pluto and Vesta, both symbols of the soul, there's something, it's indicative of something that what you invest in during this time must come from your heart, Leo, and Pluto, your soul. So it's really a very powerful passage that kicks off on the 22nd of June. So I just wanted to highlight that as my final point for today. Okay, so I'm going to come back in a couple of days' time to talk about Sun Venus. The evening star is going to be born on the 4th of June. So there's Venus, now in Gemini. Sun's in Gemini. Jupiter is going into Gemini, I think, is it tomorrow? Tomorrow, the next day. I've already spoken a little bit about Jupiter in Gemini. That was an audio recording. You can find that on my channel. That was a week ago, I think, or something like that. But I will also come back and talk a little bit more about Jupiter in Gemini. And before I do, let me just read this quote to you. And this is the perfect quote for all this Gemini energy that is present and that will be rebirthed with the Venus evening star and Jupiter in Gemini for the next 12 months. And I think this quote nails it. And especially because of the background of all the technological advancement, AI, the world of information, right? And here's the quote: information is just bits of data. Knowledge is putting them together. Wisdom is transcending them. I love that quote because I think that's going to be really important for us to to keep in mind as we go through this Gemini season with all this Gemini energy, because there's going to be a surge of a lot more data highlighted and emphasized. It cannot be any other way because everything's going into Gemini, and Jupiter is the planet that expands everything for better or for worse. So it can be an overloaded mental stimulation that really throws our central nervous system out of whack when we are just, so distracted by a million different things. It's wonderful for accumulating, let's say, knowledge at least, and learning and studying, but it can be difficult to remain grounded. Gemini is like this little butterfly, just floats around everywhere. It's not anchored into anything. It's jumping around from one thing to the next. It's not interested in understanding what, it's the understanding comes from Sagittarius, the opposite sign of Gemini. Gemini is just interested. It's just curious. It's Jupiter that brings the meaning and the substance and the teaching. Gemini collects it all, the data, and Jupiter brings the bigger picture and the meaning to everything. So it's just a great quote to sort of keep in mind with all this Gemini energy coming up, because there's just so much of an influx and an overload of useless, actually, information and so much bullshit. I've watched so many things on TikTok and Instagram of people sharing this or sharing that, or claiming this or claiming that, quick fixes for this, or making money here or making money there, and you can do it this way and you can make $7,000 through just sharing one photo, and all this absolute fucking nonsense, right? Which is just complete BS. And it's done in such a way where it attracts you, it draws you in. It's, you know, it has a lot of views, and a lot of people, you know, fall for it. I'm just observing and watching out of curiosity. I'm just seeing, there it is, Gemini, curiosity. I'm just seeing what's out there and what people are doing, and I'm just observing who's jumping on, you know, and what's capturing people's attention, you know. And it's always about quick fixes, you know. Everyone wants a quick fix about everything. Quick fix to money, quick fix to health, quick fix in my relationship, quick fix to everything. And life just doesn't work like that. If it was so easily fixable to fix things very, very quickly, then this whole freaking, you know, reality would look very different. We'd be able to fix a lot of problems a lot sooner, wouldn't we? It just doesn't work like that, because we've got to authentically, honestly, and consciously, deeply work through our stuff. It's, you know, you just can't get a Band-Aid and a quick fix. Gemini can have that tendency, you know, because it's just about, oh, I'll have a bit of this, I'll have a bit of that, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in that. It's a mutable sign, an air sign, the first air sign out of all the air signs. So it's the baby of the air signs. And the curiosity is very natural, nothing wrong with that at all. But I guess it's about, you know, just being aware of what you are allowing your energy to attach to, in whatever way that may be. And especially because there are so many people being so deceptive online with social media platforms and with YouTube channels, you know, promoting themselves as this, that, and the other. And most of them are not what they say at all. It's just a fact. So be careful. And as I said, you know, reach out if you are interested in the Chiron class, if you want to join the Vesta class, which it's not only going to be Vesta. Vesta will be a class with another asteroid. I've just forgotten which one. But if you send me an email, I can tell you. 2 different series available. You can grab the Chiron workshop if you want. Readings at a reasonable price for the month of June. And yeah, just if you have any questions, just reach out, and I'll see you soon. Hope this Vesta transmission was helpful for you. Just gave you a little bit more understanding, or a little bit more to think about. And reach out if you have any questions. See you soon for the gorgeous, gorgeous Sun-Venus conjunction, which will be the Venus evening star. But lots to say about that, which is expected because it's Gemini. But I'll bring in the Sag component. I'll make it meaningful. See you soon. Bye.